All right, well, good morning. It is 8:02 in the a.m. We're at FEDC, Fairbanks Economic Development. It's the Energy for All Alaska Task Force meeting of November 12th, 2019, if I'm not mistaken, day after Veterans Day. For all of you who have served, thank you very much for your service. Very much. Our guest today is Mr. Dan Britton and Ms. Michelle Hollowell, with the Interior Gas Utility, here to give us our update on the Interior Energy Project. They've had a lot of stuff going on, and so we'll get an update on that. I don't actually have a bio for you, Mr. Britton, so it's my chance to force you to tell us a bit about your background, because you have a very long experience in the industry.
Sure. So I started actually in the gas industry. It was really my first non-job while in school, or non-school job, I guess I would call it. Started in the field as a welder, emergency response, installed service lines, main lines, both plastic and steel, and prior to that received a diploma in natural gas and petroleum technology from the British Columbia Institute of Technology, and wanted to start all the way through the beginnings and work my way through, and so I did that at a large gas utility in Vancouver, BC. It's now called Fortis. It's changed names over the years as different companies have, as it's been bought and sold, but they have about 1 million customers. They have a large LNG peak shaving facility in Delta, British Columbia, and that's where I really got my start into the LNG side of our business, where that facility had been dedicated to the utility for most of its life, and back in the 90s, the utility started to look for alternative sources of revenue, and we started to branch out into what we call the non-regulated division. So we started moving LNG to a sawmill in BC for their kilns, so they used the LNG to power their kilns to dry the wood. And then we started serving ski resorts that were off the pipeline system, so putting in dedicated system for things like ski resorts, and which is really what Fairbanks is we're an off pipeline community that needed to find an alternative source of, or alternative means of bringing our energy into town, and that's how we bring the LNG here. So it was in that background that led me to this opportunity 19 years ago. Moved here 19 years ago with my wife and kids. They're now grown and off doing their thing. My daughter's back working in the hospital. So I've been here since 2000 and been pushing this project along since then. So a little bit of my background.
Sure.
So excited today to give an update on the project. As Jomo said earlier, we've got a lot going on. Really in every piece of our business, we're extremely busy. So I'll give you an update on some of the things we have happening. But first,
not just going on, you've gotten a lot of stuff done.
Yeah, and we'll focus on what we've got done as well as we look in. I usually like to look out the windshield and not in the rearview mirror, but it's helpful sometimes to just take a pause and look back. We really have got a ton of work done in the last year and a half. So just a reminder of why we're here, what our goals are, but to bring low-cost energy to as many residents and businesses of Interior Alaska as quickly as possible, and help to stabilize the economy and help improve our air quality. I've been touching base on a little bit of the history in my last few presentations, so I thought I'd do that. Some people don't recall, and we hear a lot of people say, when are we getting gas in Fairbanks? And it's a little bit of an irritating question, given that I've been providing gas in Fairbanks since 1998, but obviously on a limited scale, so we're really looking to ramp up the scale of that service. But Fairbanks Natural Gas was formed in 1998 and began providing LNG, or gas through LNG, to its first customer in 1998. In 2012 is when the borough acquired its natural gas utility powers through the transfers from the city of Fairbanks and the city of North Pole. And in 2013, Governor, at that time, Governor Parnell and the legislature signed into law Senate Bill 23, which established the Interior Energy Project and provided the funding sources that we're utilizing today. As a refresher, that was made up of $57.5 million capital appropriation, $125 million deposit to the SETS funds for loans dedicated to this project, and $150 million of bonding authorization.
And those SETS loans had quite a bit of flexibility allowed to them regarding terms.
Yeah, the legislature allowed ADA to waive its normal terms, fees, things of that nature, and the IGU was successful in negotiating extremely beneficial terms with ADA, and I'll touch base on I think I have a financing slide, or did we take that one out? Okay, so the SETS loan, the $125 million, which is now actually $135 million, ADA recently provided us an additional $10 million, has a 15-year deferral on interest and principal, and we're not accruing interest during that period. It's a full 0% interest during that period. So our first loan payments don't start until 15 years after the date that agreement was signed, which was the June of 2018. So extremely beneficial. And then at that point, another 35 years at 0.25% interest. So very good loan terms for the project. There is an additional potential 5-year deferral of the principal if we don't meet our conversion goals. So if the project doesn't meet its conversion goals, we can defer the principal owed to ADA at that time by another 5 years. The SETS loan is fully subordinate to any bond financing we do, which is an important piece of that financing package, as that's what will give the bondholders the peace of mind that their bonds are repaid first, and allows us to achieve a investment grade rating on those bonds. In 2015, as a result of kind of some, I guess, project stumbling through some challenges related to developing a facility on the North Slope and aggregating demand, HB 105 was signed into law. That renewed and advanced IP, allowing for the liquefaction to be constructed in the Cook Inlet, and required some additional things be done by the ADA Board of Directors. Specifically, a complete project plan had to be approved prior to expending any of the, continuing to expend any of the dollars. That was done in 2015. The ADA Board passed an HB 105 resolution. They also purchased Pentex. ADA purchased Pentex, which was the holding company for all of the privately held utility assets, both the liquefaction plant in Point Mackenzie, the gas utility in Fairbanks, Fairbanks Natural Gas, and a couple of other subsidiaries. We have a entity called Arctic Energy Transportation, where we have 2 LNG fueling stations in Alaska. So a lot of people don't know 2 of our trucks that are hauling our LNG are powered by LNG, and we invested quite a bit of money in constructing those fuel stations with the idea that that might become beneficial for not only ourselves but other trucking companies in the future for more stably priced product and help with the air quality issues and reduce emissions substantially. Carl?
So are those trucks owned by you and leased to the trucking company, or?
Yeah. So we own the trucks. We own all of the trailers in our fleet, and then we contract out the trucking. So the trucking company provides driver and diesel power if they're not using our LNG trucks. And yeah, so we lease them back. They operate them on our behalf. Yeah.
How does that currently equate between, like, using diesel in a truck to pull it in LNG? Is it comparable?
Price-wise?
Yeah.
Yeah, price-wise it's comparable, slightly below diesel. Depending on the time, diesel prices go up and down, but it's pretty comparable. Yeah, it works out fairly well.
Well, one of those fueling stations is here in Fairbanks, correct?
One's in Fairbanks and one's in Big Lake at, I don't know if when you're driving down the Parkside, there's a Fisher's Fuel kind of truck stop. We're located at that facility. Did you have another?
Is there a plan to convert more of them to LNG?
Yeah, we'd like to convert more in the future. There was a bit of the units we use are what's called a high pressure direct injection, and they're about 475 horsepower units. They stopped making that particular engine. It was a consortium of Cummins and Westport, and they moved to focus purely on spark ignited natural gas engines. and that get used very heavily in the bus fleets and the, a lot of waste management. Trucks are in that, and they're about a 400 horsepower, 300 to 400 horsepower. In Alaska, in our roads, that's a little lower than the trucking companies want to see. So we're hopeful they'll come up with something that's a little better fit here. For now, we're kind of stuck with where we're at.
But back on the, well, just I guess to conclude on the filling, so we do have a filling station here, so it would be available if, say, the borough wanted to convert over to bus fleet, or if, say, our waste management wanted to start making that kind of transition, that infrastructure's in place.
Right, it's part of it. The bus fleet will likely go to CNG, compressed natural gas, because they're local, so they're out for the day, they come back and park, and they can refuel overnight. They can either do a slow fill or a fast fill. And the borough passed a resolution about 8 months ago now, I think, where they're authorizing the conversion of the bus fleet to CNG. And as they move forward and replace buses, they can hopefully make that transition.
Oh, I'm glad I asked. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And we have been powering a number of our small trucks in our fleet with CNG for years. You probably have seen them. They've got birch trees all over them. They're green, and our logos and things like that. So we've been using CNG in our fleet for some time. So moving on, in 2018 is when IGU then purchased the Pentex assets that Ada had purchased, and at that time also established the finance agreement that's governing the Ada financing for the project as we move forward. So our largest and most prevalent project that we have ongoing, and what we've termed the heart of the Interior Energy Project, is the 5.25 million gallon storage tank that's being constructed at the end of Pegger Road down near the levee. The tank itself has been complete for a couple of months now, and is being maintained under a nitrogen purge, so it's ready for LNG at any time. What we've been focused on is the completion of the balance of plant work, so all the piping, electrical, all of the components that are required to support getting LNG in and out of that tank. We have a target date for start of cool down of November 18th, so just around the corner. I think next Monday we'll be bringing in trailers and do the purge and cool down of the tank. So what that is the tank itself, the LNG is about minus 260 degrees, and so we have to go through a purge the tank of its nitrogen to methane, and at the same time we have to slowly cool the tank down so we don't shock the metals, and so we'll follow a cool down procedure. It'll take a few days to achieve that. So we introduce first cold vapor, and then liquid at a slow rate. That liquid boils off, and as it boils off, we will recompress it and put it in our system. And then once the tank has gotten cold and it'll hold LNG, then we start building volume. And then over the first few days, then we can start offloading at our regular rates. But for the first few days, it'll be a truck will take us 16 hours or more to slowly cool the tank down.
How many trucks can it hold in?
It'll hold 500 plus trucks. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how many weeks will it take before you're...
Months before it'll be months before it's full. We're anticipating to have about 2.5 million gallons in by the end of June time frame. And then depending on our demand, we'll decide whether we'll fill it the rest of the way this summer, or whether what volume we're going to keep in there. There's not necessary to keep it 100% full if the demand hasn't fully caught up yet. But we'll play that one by ear, make those decisions as we get closer.
And in terms of commercially viable and commercially operating, like the House bill required for the extension, what point does that qualify for commercially viable?
LNG deliveries into the tank that are not for testing purposes.
Okay.
So I would call the cool down and the purging for testing, and then once we're receiving LNG and changing the level in the tank is commercially operational. is what I'm using. We received clarification from the Department of Revenue on all the forms we needed. We have to certify this, the tank is larger than 25,000 gallons. We have to have an independent auditor review our expenses and provide a certification that our expenses are appropriate related to the tank, and send those in as part of our application for that storage tax credit.
So Monday's still gonna be the testing and the...
Yeah, but within a few days, we should be in that mode of full commercial operation,
Right.
so.
Well, and you noted that, again, the first injections of the gas are gonna boil off, and they're gonna be compressed and put in the system.
Yep.
It actually works out that now is when that's happening, because you're starting to have demand on the system. It's gotten cold, people are calling for gas.
Yeah.
So it will be sold.
It'll be sold, yeah.
Sounds commercial to me.
It'll be in commercial operation. We're gonna meet the deadline. It's been, as David will attest to, we've been running pretty hard. He's been running really hard. The contractors have been running pretty hard on the project to keep our schedule, so.
Is all the gas coming up on the road?
Yes.
You don't use the railroad at all?
Not yet. We're in talks with the railroad regularly, and we'll likely use the railroad at some point. Right now, our current storage facilities, we have a total of 340,000 gallons. And in the winter, we maintain a minimum of 5 days peak supply and inventory. And that requires a just-in-time delivery system. So essentially, as soon as we have enough room in one of our storage facilities, we receive a truckload. And then,
So at the end of Aurora, there's like 6 new tanks in connection to the railroad. That has nothing to do with you.
that's not our project. That's an ultra-low sulfur diesel project, is my understanding. Yeah.
They did receive, in fact, you all received the first commercial LNG by rail delivery
Yeah.
as a tester.
Yeah,
So they've done a shipment.
we participated. The Alaska Railroad's the first railroad in the U.S. to receive approval to ship LNG by ISO containers, and they still have that permit today. And we, as Jomo said, participated in that project and actually shipped 8 loads on the railroad from our facility. With the larger tank, it lends itself that we can start considering some batch deliveries, which works a little better on the railroad than needing just-in-time deliveries. Right now, when we send a LNG trailer, truck trailer, we get it back in about 18 hours. When you send a container by rail, you might get it back in 3 days. So you need a lot more containers, and you have to have more place to store it in the interim. So it's not just quite as easy a decision as one might think. So some of the things we've been doing concurrently with the final balance of plant work is we have started to commission some of the key components of this facility so we can, again, keep our schedule. So we commissioned our instrument air and nitrogen system, which was important because in order to put the pumps in the tank, we have to keep them dry. And so we keep a nitrogen purge going through those pumps so they're ready. We can't have any moisture in those pumps whatsoever, so they have to be kept dry. So we commissioned that system and have been keeping nitrogen flowing through the pumps since we put them in the tank. Placing the 3 LNG pumps in the tank was a major milestone for us, and that's been completed. Each one of those tanks, the pump sits at the bottom of the tank in a pump well. So they have to be lowered from the top about 100 feet down, all of their cabling and components. And so that was an opportunity for our full-time operators then now to become part of the project. It's been contractors up till now, but now we're starting to take over systems, and our operators have to become familiar and proficient with that work. So they were the ones that actually put the pumps in the tank. Our boil-off compressors, we have 3 50% capacity compressors. We had the company that manufactured those, their technicians in for about 10 days, and they've commissioned those boil-off gas compressors on air right now, and so they're now ready to go. And they did all the checkouts of those, and so as soon as we start introducing the gas, we can start running those units.
Can I ask about your pumps?
Sure.
When did they start running? You said they've been cycling nitrogen.
So right now, they're not actually running, we're just flowing nitrogen through them. So they won't run until we have about 200,000 gallons of LNG in the tank. So there's a heel in the bottom of the tank that we got to reach to the bottom of the pump intake. So they won't run until we get about 200,000 gallons in the tank, 130 to 200,000 gallons.
So do they make any sort of noise right now? Are they on, you know, per se?
No, they're
Okay,
yeah.
so they're just quiet?
They're just quiet. They're just sitting there. Yeah. Yeah. They're electric pumps driven by VFDs, variable frequency drives, and they're a electromagnetic motor pump. So they'll be quite quiet, and they're inside our tank that's got an inner tank and then an outer tank concrete wall and 3 feet of perlite insulation between it. So the likelihood is we'll never hear them.
That was an interesting question, though. None of us have ever asked about noise before.
So I work up at the university for the infrasound group, and we've been seeing a 2 hertz signal from the array in Fairbanks, and it's we're able to point it somewhere at town from where the array is, and we're not quite sure where it's coming from, and we've ruled out the Fairbanks, the new power plant on campus, and so you're my next suspect. So 2 hertz is not something you would hear with your ear. And it's a periodic signal that turns on and off, and I'm trying to figure out.
How long has that been going?
You know, we've been seeing it, I haven't pinned it down exactly when, but the last few months.
Huh.
And it, over the past few weeks as well, I took it to Bill at the power plant, and he was like, power plant's not online right now, it's not us.
Yeah.
But it could be, you know, a resonance in a chamber is something that could very easily produce a signal like this, so I was wondering if there was something running and whether that, what the resonant frequency of your tank is and whether that could be a culprit.
It could be was filling the tank with the nitrogen, because we do have a smaller compressor running and a nitrogen generator. So we had 2 options for producing the nitrogen. We can buy it, which would have cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars to purchase the nitrogen for this project. Or we actually had a unit that we bought a long time ago in our scrapyard that was an Alaska unit that never got installed, and so we put it in service, and we've been producing all our own nitrogen for this site. So it was.
When that started?
What was the first start of the purge, David? July?
Probably beginning of July,
Yeah.
Okay.
but it's been off for the last week, so I'd be
Okay.
curious if you saw that fall off in the last week.
What day was the last day, do you know? Good.
I don't wanna get it wrong, but anyway, we can go into depth.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
that'd be interesting.
We can get you some info if it's helpful.
Yeah.
Here's a few pictures of some of the activity. You can see now, for those that have previously seen the pictures we've shown, you have not seen piping on the side of the tank until now. That's what the bottom, on the left-hand side, the base of the tank looks like. You can see there's a single pipe that's coming down, and then pipes coming out of it in the kind of a T structure. So what we have done is we've run our liquid pipe inside our vapor pipe to maximize security and minimize any potential if there was ever a leak inside the liquid pipe. We've got it contained in the vapor pipe, and then that liquid would be captured in our boil-off gas system and used out in the system. So what you see there in the T is the liquid lines breaking out from the vapor lines, so that we have some control at the bottom of the tank, and then they go down into our piping trench in the larger combined pipe again. So they, on the right-hand side, you can see the crane. They're lifting that structure into place. They built it on the ground and lifted it with all the piping and conduit and everything on the rack in one lift to maximize efficiency. The left middle picture is the tie-ins where the piping that was left from the tank contractor, and then the balance of plant contractor connecting all of those. And then the one just beside it, the boil-off gas heater is, so we're keeping the ground frozen at this location for the life of the facility. And the way that we're doing that is we're taking the boil-off gas, which is very cold, minus 240 degrees about, and we're cross-exchanging that with a water glycol that's in a loop that's going around the tank. And so the water glycol loop is going to warm the boil-off gas and then cool the ground. And so we have to warm the boil-off gas before it goes into the suction of the compressor. Otherwise, if it up to about 0 degrees, otherwise again we would have had to buy cryogenic compressors, which are extremely expensive. So we're warming that boil-off gas and keeping the ground frozen. So it's free energy. The other major project we've been working on in town is our North Pole storage facility, and we've had some starts and stops there, but we've made some good progress now. We purchased the land from GVA in September. We have about 20 acres on H&H Road right across the street from the old refinery and from their one of their power plants. And we started the ground improvement there on October 1st, and we had a November 15th substantial completion date. The contractor completed a couple weeks ahead of schedule, so that site, we completed all of the over-excavation, deep dynamic compaction, and the site is now flat level gravel. We're waiting for the next contract phase, which is out for bid right now. The bids were due on the 14th, but we're extending them 1 week because we had an addendum to clarify some things, that questions that came up during the review period. So I did just extend that this weekend, actually. So.
One question about North Pole. Were you about to show a picture?
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's
some pictures.
Yeah, we got a few pictures. So that's what it looked like mid work, where they're removing all of the silt-laden materials, backfilling with NSF gravels. They did have to dig down below the water table for a bit, and then brought back up above the groundwater, and then they completed what's called deep dynamic compaction, which is a picture on the left, and essentially dropping a heavy weight on it repeatedly until they get their compaction that they're looking for. That all went very well. They completed the work. Then we do test drills to make sure that the compaction is achieved per the design. Everything went great. That was HC Contractors, a local contracting firm that did the work. And that's how the site looked before it got blanketed in snow. So it's ready to go for the next contractor. So we have a target date of the fall of 2020 for that to be in service, and we can begin gasifying the distribution system that's in North Pole at that time.
So ready for the next heating season.
Yeah.
So a question regarding, if I may.
Yeah.
Again, you say about 20 acres.
Mm-hmm.
It was enough land. It was enough land to actually do more than you're planning to do with the initial phase of the storage. And I was just wondering if the actual land work you did anticipates that potentially larger configuration, or we just really kind of are sticking to having enough land to put it in service?
So the land work we did allows for a bit of expansion, but not a large field-directed tank. So it allows for, what we're putting here is 2 of the tanks we have in existing operation, 2 75,000-gallon tanks. We're going to move them from Fairbanks to North Pole. And then our design allows for the addition of 2 more of those 75,000-gallon tanks based on the groundwork that we did. And then we do have room to put up a full containment field-directed large tank if Golden Valley decided they wanted a significant amount of LNG storage on site to power the LM6000 that they have there that's currently using a blend of naphtha product.
But anticipated initial demand is
pretty low here.
Pretty low,
yeah.
So that's 150,000 gallons is...
150 will be plenty for this site for a long time. Additionally, the large storage tank is meant to be the security of supply for the entire system. So if we had an extended road closure, for some reason couldn't bring any product up from the liquefaction facility, we can transload out of the large tank to the smaller tanks in North Pole. So we can not only fill trailers, offload trailers, but we can fill them. And then the security, the design is for a high level of supply reliability. In each component we have redundancy. So our in-tank pumps, we have 300% pumps installed. So if we remove one for out of service for maintenance, we still have a backup our vaporizers, we have 50% capacity, so if we have to shut one in, we have still full capacity. Same with the boil-off gas compressors. And then our offload station's designed, we can load a trailer directly through the vaporizers, so if we have to isolate the LNG feed from the tank, we can feed our system directly out of trucks through the vaporizers. So we tried to build in the highest amount of redundancy that we could in the facility through the design.
That made me think, Dan, because you guys have avoided trying to have the expense of having a pipeline tie Fairbanks out to North Pole. With these changes, you probably won't need and be able to bear that expense for a decade or two, depending on use.
Yeah, it'll be a while, particularly till there's a transmission line. I do envision the distribution systems will be interconnected prior to that. Yeah,
Okay.
But a high-pressure transmission line will be some time out.
Any other questions on this?
Do you have any anticipation at this point, Dan, of demand in North Pole? Are people preparing to hook up?
Yeah, the people are preparing to hook up. There's some new builds that have gone to propane, waiting, so they can make a much quicker, cost-effective conversion at the time. So yeah, I think we're starting to get some pent-up demand there. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we move forward. So that was a major milestone for us for North Pole. You know, those pipes have been in the ground since 2015 under nitrogen and waiting gas service. So we're extremely excited to be able to get those pipes gasified and get some gas into those systems. Along with all of this activity happening in Fairbanks, we have a major project going on at our liquefaction facility in Point Mackenzie. We've been working on the front-end engineering and design work for an expansion of that facility. It currently liquefies 50,000 gallons a day. Our first expansion is going to add 100,000 gallons a day of capacity. We issued just a couple of weeks ago, on the 25th of October, a notice of intent to award the pretreatment and liquefaction supply to Air Liquide, and you're probably all quite familiar. They're a very large player in the industrial and commercial gas market, so a substantial amount of experience with operating not only their own plants, but building plants for others in the air separation and the liquid nitrogen business, which is pretty close to the LNG side of things. So that award is pending based on our financing and our board final investment decision, which we're hopeful we'll get in early 2020.
With all of our gas for this Titan plant coming from Cook Inlet, coming from Hillcorp, which also supplies all of South Central's gas, do you or IGU negotiate directly with Hillcorp? Do you have a different subsidiary? Are you tied into that same price structure as South Central? How does that gas price work coming out of Cook Inlet?
Yeah, so we're I guess I'll say we're in the market right now. We've hired MAP Consulting, which is a group out at Marianne Peace is basically MAP Consulting. She's been working in the gas side of things in the inlet for a long time. So her and I are beating the doors right now for our next tranche of gas supply. Hillcorp is an obvious potential. And the cost structure is based on the demand and supply that are pretty tight right now. So gas out of the Cook Inlet is more expensive. We're looking for alternatives to that to try and bring that cost down, but we don't know if any of those will come to fruition yet.
Where might some of those other alternatives be?
There's a few other minor gas players. Blue Crest is starting to bring some more gas into the market. You know, you've got Fury that's going through their bankruptcy right now. And so depending on where those assets land and who they land with is a potential. You've ML&P and Chugach are combining right now, and they bought a substantial portion of the Beluga gas field, which is where some of our gas comes from. So they're a gas owner. So those are a couple of the things we're looking at. We're also not limiting our look to just Alaska gas, but there's a fair amount of LNG available in BC and Alberta right now if you can crack the cost of shipping. If you can drop that there's a potential we could import, some LNG. So we're looking at all of our options right now. Our base pro forma, just the, baseline pro forma is based on a gas contract price of $7.72 per 1,000 cubic feet, which is what we pay today, to Hillcorp, and then it's escalated at 2% thereafter.
So the current contract does not escalate?
Our current contract does not escalate, and it expires in, end of April in 2021, I think.
And how does that 772 compare to the rest of South Central's gas costs?
For recent gas contracts that have the same comparable security of supply, it's about the same. Yep. And then we pay a transportation tariff to Enstar to move that gas to our plant gate. And depending on where the gas comes from in the inlet, we have to pay an additional transportation tariff to Harvest, which is a Hillcorp subsidiary that owns a bunch of pipelines in the inlet also.
I don't work for IGU, I work for FEDC. It is a high-price regime with Hillcorp.
Oh, yeah.
But they,
I figured. Yeah.
but it's, when you contract with Hillcorp, you have a very high security of supply, at least vis-a-vis the Cook Inlet. So again, you're paying a little bit higher price, but they have your gas all day, every day, whereas some of the other smaller players, it might have been more speculative.
And it's gonna be transportation plus transportation plus transportation costs to get up here that'll drive up that 772 more once it gets to the doorstep.
Right, that's the biggest challenge for Fairbanks, right? We have to purchase the gas, transport it through the pipeline, liquefy the gas, put it in a mobile transport it here, store it, and then we're kind of like a conventional utility at that point. So, you know, the Interior Energy Project and the legislature and the state recognized those challenges and provided some tools to help with alleviate some of those costs. It didn't go as far as we would like. We'll continue to look for any alternative sources of financing and money to continue to bring our costs down. And each part of our business we continue to look for opportunities to reduce costs. But I think although there was our large storage project had some budget creep, and we ended up about $10 million higher than our original budget. It's likely the most economically constructed LNG storage facility in the history of LNG in my mind. You look at the cost of our project and some of the others that you read being completed out in the industry, the facility in Tacoma, for example, it's pushing $400 million, and we constructed our storage tank for 58, and then we'll be looking at our liquefaction for about 50. And so I think we are doing an excellent job expending these funds, is getting the most bang for our buck.
Are those similar size comparisons?
Similar size. Yeah, the Tacoma one's a combined liquefaction and storage, but when you look at the amount of vaporization capacity and things that we have, we've done really well with this component. Particularly given, you know, there's not been one constructed in Alaska since the 50s, so it's pretty hard to find comparables when you're developing and you're building your budgets. And so that's one of the challenges we work through. You know, when you're building a mile of road, you've got 600,000 miles that you can compare your cost to when you're building your budgets. When you're building a brand new project that nobody's built comparable in the state before, it makes it a little harder. So the Titan expansion, our engineering, we should have completed by the end of 2019 and locked down to a plus or minus 10% budget for that to bring to the board for their final investment decision.
Is the North Slope still in the picture for supplying gas or not?
We're not actively looking in the North Slope. I hear rumors every once in a while that others are, but I'm not having any active discussions with anybody on that. Somebody wanted to construct on the North Slope and bring us some LNG and could do it cost effectively, we'd be happy to consider that. But for now, we've moved away. What happened when we started the North Slope, our demand profile just changed. At first, we had Flint Hills at 3 BCF a year. We had Golden Valley at 3.6 BCF a year. And we had the gas consumers between FNG and the IGU consumers. And then Flint Hills 3 went away. At Golden Valley's 3.6 dropped to 1.9 maybe. because they're not operating that LM6000 as a baseload facility anymore. They're using their Healy project as the baseload, Healy 2. And then, so they're only using in that North Pole facility about 1.9 BCF worth of energy in a year. So, and you couldn't get those parties all to agree to aggregate their demand. And so when what we were left with at the end of the day was the gas consumer, the customers of the gas utilities, taking all the risk for the capital investment on the North Slope. And the capital investment at the time we abandoned that project was pushing $250 million for the liquefaction facility. That's a big number to swallow when you're trying to grow demand, and that's what caused us to move away from the North Slope.
What's BCU?
BCF, billion cubic feet. Yeah. Sorry if I said BCU, I misspoke.
Well, and then it's BTUs.
BTUs and BCF.
Yeah. BTUs and BCFs.
I can go back to my Canadian days, start talking gigajoules if you want. Yeah. I used to have it all in my head, but it's not anymore. It's gone.
Dan, is IGU working with other utilities in the state to potentially leverage a tanker out of BC? Because I imagine that's quite a shipment to bring up to Alaska.
Yeah, so the Marathon purchased the ConocoPhillips facility that was there. So there is a facility in Kenai that could play a role long-term in not only the Cook Inlet market, but potentially for us. They have an application in with FERC right now to have that facility be able to receive LNG instead of export, so import versus export. But it's still a year or so off, they think, before they get that decision. And I don't know if you saw Marathon, it was first Endeavor. Actually, Endeavor purchased the facility, and then Marathon merged with Endeavor or purchased Endeavor. And then there was a recent Bloomberg article where Marathon was considering maybe divesting some assets in non-core markets that they have. And Alaska is one of those, I believe. It was at least mentioned in the article. So it's kind of a little bit of flux in what's going on there. So certainly we're in discussions with other potential energy users on ways to...
But they could offload a whole tanker?
They can offload a whole tanker. They have, in the Kenai, they have 3 tanks down there with a total capacity of about 2 billion cubic feet. So each one of their tanks is slightly larger than our new tank. They're about 0.7 BCF each, and our tank is about 0.45 billion cubic feet. All right, so all that kind of construction in the background and work activity is bringing us to really what it means at the end of the day. Well, what's that mean for a gas customer, and when can I have gas? And then, so that's the exciting part for us. And for the first time in a long time, we can tell people you can have gas in the spring of 2020. We're accepting new firm customers on our system, and we're supplying you on a first-come, first-served basis. And so get in now if you're interested in gas. And Michelle has been active now in the community, both participating in the fair and then the winter expo to get the word out and to start accepting applications and providing materials for customers and what they need to apply for service and do the conversion. We've been working with the borough on their wood stove exchange program. If you do have a solid fuel device, you qualify to convert to natural gas or other gas. And can get the most of your conversion paid for through that program. I don't know if you've seen recently the mayor introduced an ordinance also to direct $1 million to conversion from oil to gas. So that'll allow customers to get help with their conversion costs in the non-attainment areas. If you're in a high air quality challenged area, you can get your conversion subsidized or paid for through that program. All of those things help us meet our conversion goals. Yeah.
Are you taking customers that you would have to truck LNG to their house, or only where you run a hard line?
Only where we run a hard line. LNG doesn't lend itself very well for service to individual small consumers. The tankage itself is a high capital cost. You have a continuous boil off that you need to be consuming. Otherwise, your tank will get above the pressure will be too high, and you'll end up relieving the product, and so you need a consolidated consumption mass to be able to provide the service. Yeah.
Talkeetna Lodge.
Talkeetna Lodge is an area we've been serving for 20 years. We have a small storage and vaporization facility, but it's over a 200-room lodge that also has employee housing on location as well. So that's an example of an area that we can serve, but it needs to have a load substantial enough to consume, it is minimum, the boil-off gas that's created. So we had some creative things to keep our capital costs down there, and it's worked extremely well for them and us for 20 years. And we look for, we'll have two 50,000-gallon tanks that are available for other purposes when we decommission the storage facility in Fairbanks that's currently operating. So we might look to other opportunities to install those and provide service. If people are paying attention, this project is now, and we focus on the benefits to the interior, but this project is important to more than just the interior, for particularly the LNG development side of our business. We have mines right now. Trilogy, as an example, is using LNG in their EIS, and they're looking to rely on us as a provider of that LNG.
Who's that?
Trilogy, that's in the Ambler. So we are going to be very important to the rest of the state in the mining development and the resource development. So once we construct this additional LNG supply, we can add additional trains, and if we can add those trains efficiently and cost effectively and operate them that way, then we can begin to provide real good comparative value, not only more stably priced energy, less costly, but also better in our environment, which is a key aspect of developing some of these mines, is the environmental impact they have. And when you're hauling large quantities of diesels, liquid fuels, burning them, your emissions, those all go into those equations. And so our project is going to be in a very strong position to be able to help support some of those activities.
Has Fort Wainwright approached you at all?
Fort Wainwright has an EIS out right now, so yes, they have. In their it's a EIS to replace the existing combined heat and power plant that they have. So Fort Wainwright produces their own power and heat with a combined heat and power coal facility, and they have identified 4 options currently for replacing that. One is to do nothing, which is not likely a realistic solution given the age of that facility. It's 60 years old. The other is to replace it with another coal-fired combined heat and power facility. And then the second 2 options are natural gas. Replace that facility with a combined heat and power natural gas powered, or go to a distributed energy solution where they're putting boilers and in individual buildings and using Golden Valley for their power source.
Would you be able to provide enough natural gas to Fort Wainwright, or is that going past your capacity at the moment? Past our current capacity, but our project goals, or the way we're setting up our project, was with enough notice we can make the investment in the liquefaction capacity to be able to have the LNG for them. One of the question marks will be how much storage are they going to want. What they've indicated so far is that their mandate is 14 days of energy storage for their mission critical components. So depends which assets on base they define as mission critical and what that volume projection is as to how much storage they will need. Whether we can dedicate some of the storage out of our existing facility for that purpose, or we have to build new dedicated storage for them to meet their needs.
What is the timeline for that decision by DOD?
It's probably a 10-year timeline, yeah. I think the EIS process alone will be a number of years. And then at that point, once they've made a directional decision, then they have a number of years of working on their financing through Congress and then into project implementation. So we'll have ability to meet their time needs because we'll have a number of years' notice, so we can work with them on that.
Yeah, they're actually in the scoping portion of the EIS.
Yeah, so early.
Yeah.
There's a couple other aging power plants in the neighborhood. Have you had any conversations with them?
No active conversations with anybody else. Eielson is prime also for a replacement of that facility. Yeah. You know, the Aurora plant is very old now itself, so what happens with that in the future? Does it stay a coal-fired facility, or is there some other solution that gets considered in the future? You know, there's a lot of additional opportunity for demand aggregation. This is one of those things that you know, the assets that we're building, these are 75-year, 100-year assets for our community that are just going to continue to be built upon and leveraged for the benefit of more and more pieces of our community. This, when you look back, like on a hydro project, you know, when you first build it, it's a huge investment, right? But when you look back on it 10 years down the road or so, and you look at you're producing power for 4 or 5 cents a kilowatt hour compared to the cost of buying oil or diesels or things like that to produce your power, you look back and say, man, I'm glad we made that investment. And that's what we're doing today in the Interior Energy Project. We're investing in these assets, not just for the next 4 or 5 years. This is stuff, you know, our kids are going to be turning on their gas stove or using gas in their home, and they're going to be like, man, I'm glad they built that. So, you know, our challenges are conversion. You know, the conversion numbers are a challenge, but we're the community's gas utility, and the community can contribute to that, to our success by converting to stable, more beneficial energy source for our community in the end of the day, improve air quality, and stabilize our economy.
I don't know if you mentioned it, but regarding that proposal by Mayor Ward, I believe it's on their agenda, the Assembly's agenda for Thursday. They looked at it at their work session last Thursday. It'll be up for active consideration this Thursday, in case anybody wants to go hear about what it is and hear the debate or testify. I'll be there.
Yeah, fantastic idea, great support for the project. It covers 2 things. It helps the borough contribute to improving the air quality and helps us with our conversion numbers. And the source of the funds that originated for that was a settlement from the pipeline tax issue.
So are there a number of customer thresholds after which the price would drop for gas?
As we continue adding new customers, it's just more customers we're spreading our fixed costs over. So it's just, there's no specific number there. I'll start sharing again what our projections or our goals are for conversions. You know, in my presentations, I haven't started to incorporate those again as we worked on the other pieces, but we'll start incorporating those as we move forward. So our current liquefaction facility, we have excess capacity in the off-peak times. We shut it off in the summer because we have nowhere for the LNG to go. So what we'll do is we'll run that steady state now 365 days a year other than maintenance shutdowns, and we'll fill the storage tank. And what that does is it allows us to add about 2,600 more residential customers to our systems, residential customers worth of volume, just with our existing liquefaction and the storage. So even without building the new liquefaction at Titan, we can add about 2,600 customers, or the equivalent to.
So Titan is the bottleneck for the 2,600?
That's the next bottleneck. So
the next bottleneck.
Yeah.
Storage has been the bottleneck.
Storage next was the bottleneck, so we've alleviated that. The next is production to continue to grow demand. And then transportation-wise, we have 17 trailers in our fleet today, so we have capacity there. But we'll be incrementally adding a trailer capacity or rail, ISO containers, or rail cars in the future as we need to.
What's the safety factor that you have built in, like, let's say there's an earthquake and you can't find trucks up, how many days of natural gas are you having?
Minimum 5 days during our peak, but this storage project now, for a period of time, if we fill it full, it's 70 days or more based on our current demand, but we don't want that to stay that way. We want to increase our demand. So as we increase demand, that reduces that component. We do have alternative routes, so we have 2 routes into Fairbanks from either the Parks Highway or the Glen Highway. So we have 2 alternative routes. Our facility did just withstand a pretty substantial earthquake. We were 9 miles from the epicenter of that, and our shutdown time was about 8 hours, and that was because of power loss.
I was more thinking of trucks not being able to come up yet.
So we have the alternate route.
How many days do you plan to have a safety march and, like?
Again, the RCA right now is mandated a minimum of 5 days of your peak demand.
We will always have a minimum of 5 days, for the life of the project, but more likely more than that.
Are there 2,600 additional customers along existing distribution lines?
Yes, more than that. Yeah. So just a reminder, this is the Fairbanks distribution system. As you can see, it's pretty encompassing now within the Fairbanks core. We have about 140 miles of combined system, all the way from the airport up into, we do provide service to the university right now. One of their boilers can burn either oil or gas. And then all the large box store area, all of those stores are on gas. And the infill, you can see we completed in 2015 was a lot of the yellow and green lines in the more densely populated residential subdivisions. Riverview, University West, Shannon Park, all of those have gas mains throughout those areas now. And those are the size of pipe. So the red is 8-inch, the blue is 6-inch, the green is 4-inch, and the yellow, which is much harder to see, is 2-inch.
Is the airport currently on gas, or is it?
Yep.
Okay.
The airport uses gas.
They were an FNG customer?
Yes, yeah. They have been since they constructed the new terminal. Yeah.
So pretty, Dan.
It is. I like just staring at it. It's been
So
a little bit of work.
the area, they're all supplied?
This whole area here is gasified, so there's gas in this system, and has been since we installed it. So we just need to add a service line from our main to the home, and the customer has access to gas. What's limited us in the past is we didn't have that supply security. If we added customers, we would have dropped below our mandated 5 days peak storage.
And this is the 1,100 customers still that were on FNG, and that has not been expanded yet, but starting the spring, hopefully it does.
That's correct. We did start adding service lines late this summer, and we added, I think I've got a slide here towards it. We added 50 new service lines in the system in August. We didn't start until August and September. We didn't start until mid-August, actually really adding them. But so we got those completed, and we've got our list of new applicants for next year is at about 30 plus already. Our 2 storage facilities, I don't know if you can see the 2 red squares down on the very south side. There's one just above the stop that's there, and then the other one is just up and to the right a little bit. So we have our original storage facility is going to stay in operation even with this new large tank, just to have an added level of security of supply. This is the North Pole system that was installed. It's about 73 miles of distribution piping that's awaiting the storage facility to start feeding into that.
And right now, those pipes are full of nitrogen.
Yep. So we maintain those full of nitrogen and monitor them. continuously monitor them just in case anybody hits it or causes damage. We want to know.
Would you hope to transition next fall?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to go through a purging procedure on all of these pipings to gasify them, and then at that point they'll be,
Is there any way you could point with the cursor where the, storage area is? Proposed storage area?
I think
There we
this
go.
is it right here.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is H&H Road. And so the storage, facility, there's an existing 8-inch line. Is that H&H or am I too far?
I think it might be too far. In any case, you can see that the pipes are, it's ready to go. It's as far as the infrastructure
yeah,
for
H&H.
distribution, it's
And
installed.
the top is First Road, I think?
First road.
And then we have, long-term, 2 more phases of planned expansion in North Pole as part of our current capital plan and pro forma.
And is it probably not 20 or 21 that you necessarily add more pipe, to the north?
Yeah, no, our focus now for the next couple of years is service lines on existing distribution network. Yeah.
And selling gas.
Yeah. We increase our customer numbers and revenues and which will support future financings for expansion. One of the things, the utility, when it was formed, an important thing to remember is that many municipal utilities will return revenues back to the municipality or the borough that owns them in the form of dividends. Anchorage specifically is one. And so, but the enabling ordinance for the interior gas utility has it where we retain all of any excess earnings that we have in the project for project development. So if we have excess earnings in the project, we'll use it for expansion and future investment, which is a good thing for the gas system.
And just to, if memory serves, that Hearst Road top demarcation means that they have the infrastructure that covers the bottom half of what was called the trapezoid of death, like the worst air quality zone, like per the 1415 readings. So half of that would be covered by the existing system.
Forgot to mention, but you're going to start hearing this a lot more, but as we begin to start working on our marketing and our customer communications, community communications, we've redone our logo. The board's approved a new logo. It's changed from the original slightly. Our tagline is "Breathe Easier," and you'll start to hear that in our messaging, but, breathe easier. We're taking applications and gas are coming near you. I think we got it here again. It just lends itself into, breathe easier. Your budget will remain constant because of natural gas pricing, those types of messaging will get out, which is important to customers. And as always, just a reminder, please call 811 before you dig, whether you're in your yard or out in doing construction. In the community, we'll do free locates on our gas systems to help prevent damage. I think that's it. Be happy to answer any other questions.
Is the master requirement 36 inches or whatever for depth on service and mains? I don't know.
Yeah, our mains are usually 36 to 48 inches deep, but the service lines can be 24 inches or less on residential. We try and target at 24. Yeah, but you shouldn't rely on any specific number. Make sure you call.
What are you expecting the gas at the burner tip at the home to cost per MCF? Or for BTU, I guess, compared to fuel?
So right now it's at $20.81, which is about $2.75 a gallon equivalent, just on a straight across comparison. We're anticipating that will go down over time to bottom of around $18, I think, is what's in our current pro forma. And then depending on how our gas price comes in, that will impact that.
Anybody get fuel recently, is what it was?
It's more than that.
Yeah,
We surveyed it.
Is it that low?
Yeah, so we're below fuel.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just if you do a direct comparative. One of the things to remember is when you convert to natural gas, you have a lot more options as it relates to energy efficient units. natural gas condensing boiler, you can achieve 95% plus efficiency. Your best you can do right now with oil usually is about 87%. If you have an old oil unit, it's likely below 80%. And so you can get a 10 to 15% savings just in the efficiency of your unit for the conversion, which drives that pricing comparison significantly lower.
There are also other appliances for which the efficiency is higher as well, things like with a water heater, dryers.
Yeah.
Think about those additional appliances, cooking, for which you use electric at a more expensive rate right now.
Yeah, when compared to electricity, we're well over half the cost, well below. So if you're looking at your dryer, for an example, you'll save 50% when using gas versus electricity. Cooking is the same.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the message we have, once people start using the gas, the sales pitch, the sales side of me is, it's so much better than, you know, look at a home that, if you have oil in your home, and look at your roof around your chimney. Look at the stains that are all over your shingles and everything from the emissions coming from your oil stack. And if your neighbor has gas, look at their roof, and there's nothing. There's not a single stain. You've got the risk of your buried oil tank. I mean, we have commercial customers that convert for that reason only, is that they don't want buried oil tanks on their property anymore.
Have you talked to the school district about converting their buildings?
They're converting most
They are?
of their buildings, yeah.
So that's going to be some of your biggest tenants.
They're all interruptible customers right now, but they may consider going to firm in the future. I don't know if you pay attention to the borough budget, annually they've been budgeting hundreds of thousands of dollars for spill cleanup related to their oil systems on their properties. Commercial customers have a huge liability related to that. You know, if your oil tank leaks, your cleanup costs are substantial. And
Have you done any studies on the ice port development? I heard natural gas causes quite more ice port than the other forms of heating.
No, when we first started to talk to the airport about them converting, they were concerned with that. And there's an old study from a professor out of the university that was looking at that when we first started up, and said that although that, you know, natural gas does produce some additional water vapor, it doesn't produce the particulates to go with it, and that's what's creating the ice fog, is that capture with the particulates. And so there's no contribution to ice fog from the consumption of gas.
But the fog has other issues like with air traffic safety stuff?
They determined it wasn't an issue, because the natural gas, burning of natural gas was not contributing to any additional ice fog, because it doesn't have particulates to go with it. And it's been a long time since I looked for that study. I'll have to try and find it again. Yeah.
And then the airport has experience probably to validate the
they've been using it for, when did they build the new terminal? It's been
7-8 years.
over 10 now, I think, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like things to keep up with. Oh, no, sorry.
Could IGU potentially produce propane for people who won't be on the system?
We can't produce propane. The gas that we buy in the inlet is 98.5% methane and has almost no propane in it. When we were developing the project on the North Slope has 3 to 5% propane in their gas, and we were looking at stripping that propane out for other uses. So we can't manufacture it here, but whether we consider adding propane as one of our energy offerings in the future under the goals of reducing energy costs is a different kind of question that I think will get asked and will get discussed after we kind of move through some initial phases of our project. Yeah. That's an old picture. Who found that one?
I did.
There was one in the petroleum news a while back too, and I think I had mostly black hair at the time, and when I first moved here, but
If you'll post a more recent picture, sir, I'll,
Yeah.
I'll use it next
I'll
time.
get you a new one, John.
Thank you
Hey,
so
Dan,
much.
there's nothing wrong with your hair.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes, Carl.
Yeah.
All right.
So lots of exciting things and more to come.
Yeah.
Well, I will say it's extremely, pleasant to be having the conversations of what kind of opportunities and leveraging will we do, as opposed to will we have anything at all, because we really have transitioned to a more robust system with a lot of the major construction almost done. We have a giant tank, it's right there, you can see it from the windows, and it'll start getting LNG this month. And it'll be in operation by the end of this year.
Yeah, I mean, looking back, we've consolidating 2 utilities. We filed for and received 2 CPCNs for the provision of storage of natural gas, which was a requirement for us to qualify for the storage tax credits. We began constructing a $56 million storage project and are nearing completion. We've completed the dirt work from the North Pole facility. You know, we've started the engineering work on additional liquefaction capacity, and began to add new customers to the system. And this is all in since IGU purchased Pentex in June of 2018. So we've got a lot done in a short period of time, and looking forward to wrapping a lot of it up and just adding more and more customers.
All right. Are there any further questions?
Thanks, everyone.
Mr. Britton, Ms. Sullivan, thank you so much.
How you doing, Jim? Good, Roger.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been out of town quite a bit. Traveling? Yeah, well,